Connor Bedard is now starting his second month of NHL action, and it's been a pretty good start for the young star. Jack Bushman of Locked On Blackhawks is here to talk all things Connor Bedard and all things Blackhawks next on the Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And now you can hear us on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blackhawks, Jack Bushman. And Jack, all eyes from the start, from day one when the Blackhawks drew the lucky ping pong ball to draft Connor Bedard. It's all eyes have been on him. We're now a few weeks into his NHL career. What is your early assessment of Connor Bedard?
Yeah, he's started to get it going here as of late, Gil, with 3 goals in his last 4 games, kind of getting a little bit settled. And I think the biggest thing for him is figuring out exactly what he can and can't do on the ice in terms of where his body's at, because he's not the most physically imposing player, right? That was the one knock or concern, if you will, about Bedard entering the NHL. And I think he's starting to understand that a little bit, figuring out where he can have success on the ice and just everything that comes along with it. But the shot of his is absolutely undeniable. I think that's the asset that we all assumed was going to transition the easiest to the NHL level, and we're starting to see that. I mean, whenever he gets the puck on his stick, he can let it go in the blink of an eye, and has been able to blow it past a couple of goaltenders here as of late. So it's been nice to see the progression from him recently as well. And I think a big part of that has been the Blackhawks giving him some better support up there on that top line. And an issue for this Hawks team has been Taylor Hall has missed nearly half of their games in the early going. And that was really the one piece that I thought was cemented alongside Connor Bedard on that top line. And I was really looking forward to those two establish some chemistry together. But with Hall being banged up and kind of in and out of the lineup through these first 9 games, it's been a bit of a revolving door up there along with Connor Bedard, and I think that's been a little bit tough for him. But I got to give a lot of credit to Nick Foligno, who, kind of funny enough, when the Blackhawks brought him in this offseason, I don't think anyone had him penciled in on the top line with Connor Bedard, but with Taylor Hall out of the lineup, I thought he's really stepped his game up here as of late to help Bedard reach that next level himself as well. So I think it's been a combination of Bedard getting more comfortable and also getting some help from his line mates more than he did in the early going that's led to this recent success that we've seen from him in these last few games.
That's good to see. I mean, he is the first line center already. One area that maybe he and the rest of the team have been struggling with, though, is the power play. You would think with a little extra time and space, he'd be able to create and score a little bit more. But what's been plaguing the Blackhawks power play so far?
Yeah, funny enough, Gil, this was actually something that I just broke down on last Friday's episode. Shameless quick little plug there for anyone that wants to hear more about it. But in a synopsis, I think it's been frustrating because this Blackhawks power play looked so good together in the preseason and during training camp. They were moving the puck well. And then for whatever reason, through these first 9 games, it feels like they've almost been too timid, or it looks like they kind of just got reset back to square one where they're still trying to figure out chemistry and how to set everything up. But make no mistake about it, Gil, this Blackhawks team, or this Blackhawks power play unit, I guess I should say, I don't expect them to be one of the best in the NHL. They just don't have that amount of talent, but I do believe they're talented enough to not have the second worst power play in the entire league right now. And it's got to be more than just Connor Bedard out there. And I think Seth Jones is someone who really needs to step up his game. And his struggles have been so noticeable on that top power play unit that some Hawks fans and even some people on the beat are saying maybe it's time for Kevin Korchinski to start getting that look. And another thing has been Lukas Reichel hasn't gotten opportunities with the top power play unit yet. Now, he doesn't have a point through 9 games, so that's not saying all that much, but it does feel like he's one of those talented, high upside type of players that has to be out there on that top unit with Connor Bedard, especially when Taylor Hall is out of the lineup, because Gil, right now on the Blackhawks top power play unit, they have Nick Foligno, Corey Perry, and Philip Kurashev out there. And just, if I'm speaking honestly, those three guys aren't top power play type of material. You need a Lucas Reichel out there and Taylor Hall to get back healthy. And also you need someone to be willing to shoot the puck on the blue line. And Seth Jones just hasn't done that so far. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but it certainly has to change if the Blackhawks want to take that next step offensively, because again, I do think they're too talented to be converting at a 9% clip like we've seen so far.
Yeah, I got to do better than that. Talk to me a little bit about the goaltending. Peter Mrazek has looked pretty solid, .917 save percentage. But what about Arvid Soderblom and the backup goalie situation?
Yeah, quite honestly, the Blackhawks goaltending has been pretty spectacular so far. And Peter Mrazek looks like a guy who is really trying to, I think, not only prove that he can be a starter in this league, but he's proving that he has to prove that he could still be an NHLer. I mean, kind of going and looking through the inconsistencies that he's had these last couple of seasons. And he's also battled with some groin injuries. I mean, he was really brought into Chicago last year with the tank in mind. The Hawks acquired him just to get an extra first round pick, and he was kind of a good placeholder goalie, but he's been much more than that through his first 5 starts this season. He's been incredible. And that's kind of the one thing that's been, I think, the best for the Blackhawks so far has been that goaltending. Now, the one issue with that is you can't always expect it to be at that level throughout the course of the season. So that's where the Blackhawks have to step it up defensively, but the goalies have been doing their jobs. Arvid Soderblom as well did have a shaky start on Monday against Arizona, but prior to that was looking just as good as Peter Mrazek. And this is his first full NHL campaign. So he's another goalie that the Blackhawks organization is really high on, and for good reason. He's shown some good flashes in his first couple of NHL stints, and now we get to see him as a full-timer this year. So the goalies have not been the problem for the Blackhawks, Gil, but I am questioning whether or not they're going to be able to play at that level consistently moving forward.
So, I mean, this is still a young team. This is still a team that's in a rebuilding mode. They've accumulated a lot of picks, a lot of young talent. What are the keys to improvement for the Blackhawks for the rest of this season? What do you want to see from this team to make the season a success?
Yeah, it's a little bit tough just because there's so much, I think so much unexpected that could happen because there's so much runway with this Blackhawks group. And there's a lot of players that are just kind of unknowns as well. And that's why I do believe Kyle Davidson's mentality going into the season from the general manager was almost figuring out what we have, because yeah, these are high-end prospects and high draft picks that we've accumulated, but you don't really know what they're going to be until you see them on the NHL scene. So it's kind of tough to put a finger on exactly what I want to see out of this Blackhawks group, but I would most definitely like to see them just continue to be battlers. And I think the biggest issue for them that we've seen so far has been that inconsistency from period to period. There have been some high notes this year, Gil. I mean, they've beaten Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, beaten Toronto in their building, handed the Vegas Golden Knights their first loss, but it's kind of just doing that from a period to period basis. That's kind of been the issues where one period the Blackhawks look great, and then the next it kind of feels like it can all unravel in a hurry. And that's the symptoms of a young team. Those things are going to happen, but I think what Coach Luke Richardson has said to the media and what I think that the next step for this Blackhawks team would be is just cutting those down as much as possible. Now, it's something that's easier said than done, and also something that's a little bit cliche, but quite honestly, for the situation the Blackhawks are in, you can't really ask for anything more. You can't ask this team to go out there and win games and push for the playoffs, because that's just not what they were put together to do. So I think it's just keep seeing development from these young players and try to cut down on the amount of periods that feel like they're just blow-ups and ones to forget about. Cutting those down, I think, will kind of help build the framework for what the Blackhawks can kind of put into play moving forward.
And winning a few games at home would help too.
Yes, absolutely. Particularly on Saturday against the Florida Panthers when yours truly is in attendance.
All right. Well, Jack, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find the Locked On Blackhawks podcast 100% free wherever you get your podcasts and also on YouTube. If you want to check out the show's social media page on X, you can do so at @O_Blackhawks. For some more insight from yours truly over here, you can follow me down below at Jack Bushman too.
All right, Jack, thanks so much for stopping by. Always a pleasure to talk hockey with you.
Absolutely, Gil. Thank you for having me on.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. My favorite feature by far is that you can see the view from your seat on the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And Game Time has tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.